WWT presents Partner Spotlight.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on secure voice within the contact center, brought to you by WWT Presents. Voice traffic cyber threats have become increasingly sophisticated over the years. Robocalls, spoof or spam calls, vishing, and of course, the rapidly evolving number of AI-driven attacks these days. These are all avenues that bad actors can take and are taking to compromise organizations through the contact center. And amidst today's complex and ever-growing threat landscape in which CISOs and security teams are being pulled in many directions, a common threat landscape that can often get overlooked is the contact center, where according to Mutari, more than 1 in 5 contact center calls is unwanted or malicious in nature. So what can be done? Well, my name is Brian Felt, and I'm excited to have a great panel here today to talk about just that. We have Chris Telford. He's a solutions architect at Oracle Communications based out of London, and Kevin Buckley, a technology solutions architect here at WWT with more than 20 years experience in the contact center. He's based out of Dallas, Fort Worth. Chris and Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be here, Brian.
Good to be here.
So contact centers are the primary point of contact for customers and businesses and rely heavily on voice communications that are vulnerable to cyber threats. And that threat is growing more intricate with the onset of AI. So I was hoping, Kevin, we could start with you, just exactly how we got here and what the threat landscape is for organizations that have contact centers.
Yeah, so the thing is with contact center, it's in many ways analogous to websites 20 years ago. You are open to the world and you can be connected, and the intent is to be available to be connected from anywhere. So with traditional TDM voice technology coming over a traditional phone line, there weren't any inherent threats in terms of the technology. But now with VoIP, voice over internet, you have various protocol issues. So those can be secured at the network level. But everyone's familiar with the growth of AI. And so in particular, one of the growing concerns is the use of AI for automated attacks on the contact center or indeed on anywhere in terms of voice infrastructure. But specifically, the contact center is an issue because our job in the contact center is to answer the phone. A lot of people have got to a point where if you're using your mobile phone, you don't recognize the number, you don't take the call. You don't have that luxury in the contact center. You must take all the calls. So if the call comes in, we use the term vishing, which is like phishing in email, where people are calling for, so to divide the types of call that we don't want, there's spam type calls where somebody's calling to try and sell you something. They're calling for not necessarily a nefarious reason, but it's an unwanted call. And then nefarious calls in terms of people trying to do something illegal, where they're trying to scam either an individual or more recently targeting institutions. So particularly for financial institutions, but also for other large contact centers, this nefarious calling, including the use of AI and deepfakes, is a rising threat. And so particularly for companies with data security concerns that are higher than average, it's definitely something that must be addressed. So specifically finance and healthcare, it's a major concern, but obviously a concern elsewhere as well.
And Chris, what are you seeing? So Kevin walked us through the types and some of the threats that exist. Are you finding that leaders of contact centers and organizations that have contact centers, are they aware even of the threat landscape that they're dealing with?
Yeah, I think that's the most worrying thing, Brian. In many cases, they aren't aware, right? If you think about the layers of security an enterprise goes through around their general business, you've got physical doors to the office, you've got security at the reception, you've got your email spam filters and phishing to protect your email. But in almost all cases, you have next to nothing beyond basic, IVR-based authentication in the contact center. So, there's no intent-based analysis to determine, well, what's this person actually trying to do? What is their their threat profile? And that is quite concerning, because when you ask the question, what are you doing today to protect your contact center from telephony fraud? You can kind of see the color drain from the faces of these contact center managers when they realize they're not doing anything. And that's kind of eye-opening to see that in this landscape, especially with the increase of threats, as you mentioned, with AI and machine learning. And as these attackers are getting more complex and convoluted with their attack vectors. So really quite alarming.
Well, Chris, there's security in the form of encryption, but vulnerability exists at the network level and the carrier level. So where do leaders need to be focusing their attention, or is it an answer of both?
I would say everywhere. So there's no one place to really focus in the world of security, and the key to this is creating layers of defense, right? And creating that defense in depth. So encryption, sure, that's great at protecting the actual security, the actual communications channel, but it has nothing to do with the intent behind a phone call, right? So you may encrypt the call, but the person making the call may be, creating a nefarious reason for calling. And so encryption alone is not enough. IVR authentication alone is not enough. But these are, they're methods within this layered strategy. So the more layers you add to your security profile, the better secured your contact center and your business is. It's all about risk mitigation at the end of the day, right? There's no such thing as 100% perfect security, but it's about creating enough barriers that the hackers, even the persistent attackers, are dissuaded from further attempts at your organization.
Well, Kevin, I wanted to pull on the layers comment that Chris just mentioned. We've talked about a layered approach to the tech stack. What else is comprised of that tech stack, and where do leaders need to be paying attention to when it comes to that layered approach?
Yeah, so in terms of layered approach, there are a number of products out there that will help in terms of identifying what's going on in the world. So there are databases now of known banks of numbers that are used by spammers more so. The other thing is in terms of identifying the actual number. If a number is being spoofed, then obviously that's a sign that something not necessarily nefarious, but not totally legit is going on. The other consideration is there was a large hotel casino in Las Vegas that was hit recently. They had a lot of these complex financial type threats involve social engineering, but technology is layered in as part of that threat. So, for example, if I am calling a call center and I'm representing myself as an employee of the business, if the contact center can identify that this originating number or a bank of numbers has placed several calls in the last several hours, then you can start to elevate the threat level associated with this call and apply extra layers of scrutiny in terms of digging further in terms of alerts on a security console and so on. So if you have multiple calls from the same number and some of them go to the help desk and some of them get immediately rejected, and then the call goes again, and then you see a call from sequential number. This is basically a threat vector is how it's sometimes described in the security world, where you're seeing a pattern of behavior that is not legitimate.
Yeah, Chris, maybe you could speak more on the layered approach as well, and where Oracle Security Shield fits in and how it's helping enable our customers better secure their position.
Yeah, so obviously you may be familiar with the Oracle Session Border Controller that we've been bringing to customers for over 20 years now, and an SBC is a great way to provide that front door security, right? So it's there providing the network level security, the application level security for a contact center. But it has no visibility into the intent of a call. So this is where Security Shield comes in. And again, it's building on the layers within that contact center. So you've got your front door being protected by the SBC. You've got your IVR doing authentication. You may have biometrics and things like that, providing additional authentication services. And then we've got Security Shield actually looking at the intent behind those calls. So those patterns that Kevin was speaking to, spoof calls, pattern-based attacks. Well, these are all examples of potentially malicious calls that Security Shield can pick up, detect, and then instruct the SBC to shut down, right? So it's all about providing that policy-based enforcement. And we've designed this in alignment with the NIST Zero Trust architecture. So this is based on this whole policy enforcement through the SBC policy engine based on the cloud Security Shield service. So with these in combination with additional layers of security, including things like staff training, even, right? We can even consider that as a layer of security. Helps to further secure a contact center. And we think this is really important for the contact center, especially because, as Kevin said, it's the front door to your business. You actively promote your phone number for your contact center because you want customer engagement. So you have the outside world coming to your contact center, and you can't just ignore the calls. You have to make sure that you're picking up legitimate calls. So having this AI-based service that's actually looking at the intent behind the calls as they're coming in is obviously a great way to help enhance that security profile. Additionally, something that's often overlooked is what about threats from inside the organization, right? Contact centers are particularly vulnerable to this because they have typically a high turnover rate of agents. We spoke to one BPO recently who said their turnover or the average staff retention period was about 3 to 6 months. So with staff only lasting 3 to 6 months in their organization, they were more concerned with threats from within the organization, from people who are joining and then potentially creating malicious calling profiles. So another customer who first turned up Security Shield, they discovered within the first 24 hours a convoluted premium rate number scam from one of their own agents, right? Where despite blocking premium rate numbers, this person had worked out how to call forward to premium rate numbers from their agent handset. And as a result, they were setting up long period sessions to a premium rate number they owned. And of course, costing the company quite a large amount of money. They previously had no visibility into this, had no idea what was going on. Security Shield not only shone a light on it, but actually shut it down as it was happening. And then provided the reporting that they were able to use when taking action against that employee. So yeah, I think it's important to focus on securing the solution from outside threats, but equally important to secure your business from threats from within as well. Because at the end of the day, in a zero trust model, threats can be anywhere, and we can't trust any side of the network.
Well, Kevin, I know we're still early in market, but what are we seeing in terms of client implementation, and what, how are we approaching clients as it relates to Security Shield and what we have set up in our Advanced Technology Center?
Yeah, so just to kind of revisit where clients are at, the market at the moment is evolving in terms of the understanding. So I think we referenced it earlier. Mutare has done studies, and they believe 27% of calls at call centers are unwanted calls. So again, that's spam and nefarious calls. But even spam calls waste agent time. And if you're in the contact center business, agent time is money. So they still cost a lot of money. And the figure for a 100-seat call center, which is a good size, but there's a lot of call centers that are a lot larger than that. 100-seat call center, 195K. So there's a lot of loss there. Not to mention the risk involved to a business if you're at a risk of some kind of access via a contact center into a social engineering hack or some kind of financial breach. Particularly if you're a financial company or if you're a healthcare company, it's a major concern. So in terms of supporting that, we have our Advanced Technology Center, which basically is a super lab. So as a privately held company, we have the luxury of responding to what our customers need, and we build these labs and hold them long term. So we build out different technologies working together, so we can put the various different flavors of Genesis, Cisco, Five9, other technologies, stand up the platform in the lab, tie it in with secure voice or other security technologies in terms of voice cybersecurity, and allow a customer to go look at how the product actually works, how the reporting looks, run test calls through that, and see exactly what the product can protect against and what it looks like.
And Chris, I'd love to get your feedback as well in terms of what the ATC is enabling Oracle to do when it comes to addressing clients and their needs with Security Shield. Is it, just helping them walk through and get their hands on the technology?
Yeah, I mean, I think ATC and the services the WWT and the partnership community provide are absolutely crucial to voice security, because as a software vendor, we can provide the tools, right? The tools that can be used to help secure a contact center, but someone has to use those tools and use those tools correctly. So we say that we will work with our partners, but our partners need to also work with the contact center, the enterprise organization, and all of us have to work together to create a security posture that encompasses that voice channel, right? And at the end of the day, how you deploy those tools is absolutely crucial. How you use them, how you continue your monitoring and your management of those tools is absolutely crucial. So so we see a huge amount of value in ATC and the partnership with WWT.
I want to go back to the AI thread. We talked about it quite a bit at the top. But to both of you, is there opportunity here to fight AI with AI? We talk about the AI security threat growing. What can AI do to help contact center leaders better secure themselves or figure out what threats are coming down the line?
Yeah, I think there is absolutely this arms race, right, between attackers and the contact center and generally enterprise organizations themselves. And the good news is that the same AI technologies that can be used to attack an organizations can be used to detect and mitigate. And of course, Oracle have a market-leading AI technology with our cloud AI and machine learning capabilities, and that's what we lean on quite heavily with Security Shield to help understand the intent behind a call. I think these kinds of technologies are crucial, but it's also important to understand that they do exist, because many people still think of voice as a legacy channel, which doesn't have access to these next generation technologies. But they do, and these tools do exist. So I think it's important to understand how they can be used, as well as actually the implementation of using them.
Yeah, the contact center is a massive environment for AI and machine learning in particular, because machine learning works based on large data sets, and that is something we have in the contact center. So in terms of seeing patterns and recognizing patterns, not just for security, but for other elements as well, but specifically when it comes to security, identifying patterns of behavior, you can have the machine learning see and understand what normal traffic looks like, and then it goes through a score to identify questionable behavior, and then even into this is definitely nefarious behavior, and blocking traffic, and um, adding to your database of nefarious originations and so on. And in terms of that, the AI is really essential when it comes to emerging threats, because we're not seeing it at volume in the contact center yet, but there have been cases in the press of people actually using deepfake to try and deceive financial advisors and so on. So there's definitely going to be an arms race in terms of voice authentication. So a lot of contact centers are deploying voice authentication. Well, what happens when you take deepfake and tie it into to try and defeat voice authentication systems? Obviously, there's an arms race, as Chris was indicating. There's an arms race there. So how do we address that? Now, fortunately, there are a lot of good answers. The standard voice reproduction systems actually put in a watermark into their recordings to indicate that they are not genuine. But there's a lot of smart programmers out there who can use the open source code and generate fakes themselves. So that is definitely going to be emerging, and it is something where AI really is going to be the only defense against AI.
Yeah, inevitably there's going to be threats that slip through the cracks, and at the end of the day, contact centers, has people on the other end of those phones. So how much of this is a people and process issue, and not just a technology issue?
Definitely a people and process issue, because going back to the fundamental point of a contact center is we want to be contactable. So what do we do in those boundary cases, the edge cases where a call looks suspicious, but you are not sure? Well, you have to answer the call. So we are going to have to evolve. It's going to have to include training of agents where a call is potentially marked as potential spam, potential nefarious call, but we still have to answer the call. So exactly how that is done in a contact center, we shall see in terms of coming up with best practices. That is still an evolution. But in the simple case, you can do something along the lines of this call gets sent to a particular group that is properly trained to handle calls where there's a higher potential than normal, but you're not sure whether it's a legitimate call. So definitely a complicated and evolving picture there too.
Chris, as we move into the future, whether it's AI or a layered approach, what should leaders be prioritizing over the next 6 or 12 months that's going to position them to better secure their contact centers?
So I think that initially they need to focus on their security posture, right? Adopting a zero trust approach to their security posture, and then effectively embracing this layered approach, and embracing emerging technologies like AI. But these all lead into that security policy and posture. So that's kind of the most pressing thing that they need to do is actually consider the voice channel within their security policy, because all of these organizations have security policies and they are pretty robust when it comes to screening who comes through the front door and what kind of emails are coming in and what you plug into the network. But when it comes to voice, often I think it has slipped through the wayside, slipped through the cracks over the years, and this is an area where they need to actually say, well, let's expand that security policy to include the voice. Let's work out how we approach this. Do we, just leaning on training their agents alone really is no longer acceptable. With, as Kevin, pointed out, emergence of things like deepfakes has even shown that voice biometrics can be bypassed by malicious callers. So, creating these different layers of defense will then help to mitigate those. And there's all different ways that these can be combined to provide a much more secure environment for voice.
Yeah, Kevin, anything to add in terms of
Yes.
priorities?
Yeah, it was in terms of what Chris was saying there. The part of what he's getting to is the fact that the shape for companies of how they deal with these threats is evolving. So as the threats get more sophisticated, the people, process, and technology at the company needs to get more sophisticated. So for example, with the reporting that's available for the contact center security tools, well, that needs to tie into the security team at the corporation itself. So how do we plan and evolve that process in terms of, if you have a series of threats, there comes a point where a company will probably want to investigate the seriousness of a particular threat. So unless you have a process in place to do that, you're just going to get hit with these threats. In terms of the kind of the global climate, there are now certain countries that are invested in financial fraud across the West. So these threats aren't going away, and that's part of the evolution that companies are going to have to face. Is this technology can help you, but it can only take you so far.
Well, Chris and Kevin, we are out of time. I want to thank both of you for joining us today for a very informative session on something that I think is, maybe overlooked by leaders when it comes to the security landscape. And thank you to our viewers for tuning in. You can always find more information about secure voice, contact center, digital workspace on wwt.com. Head to the search bar and you can find out all of those information. And you can certainly reach out to any of us, whether it's Kevin, myself, or Chris. Contact information can be seen on the registration page here. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you next time.